climate change, but I'll make it about climate change in a particular place, Chesapeake Bay and Hampton Roads. I'm a Kansas kid. I'm a complete freshwater kid. I didn't know anything about saltwater or the Chesapeake Bay growing up. I think it was a National Geographic special. They had this special when they built the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. And to me, even out in Kansas City, that just seemed magical as a kid to see that. First time I laid eyes on the Chesapeake Bay, I was dating my wife, Ann. Her mom and dad had a boat, the Windsong, at Eagles Marina in Deltaville, right as the creek comes into the Rappahannock River in the Chesapeake Bay. And Ann asked me to come down and spend the weekend when we were dating with her mom and dad and with her sister and her sister's fiance. My sister, Taylor, died and we buried her on Saturday in her home in upstate New York. We were all really young and really cool back then. But I had never seen the Chesapeake Bay. I thought about it from my time as a kid, but now we're down and we are going to do things that this freshwater guy had never done. I'd never picked crabs before. That was my first time picking crabs. And when they handed me tools, it was like, hey, wait, I will not work for food. But then we got in the Windsong to go across the Chesapeake Bay from Deltaville to Accomack. And I had never been seasick before either. We got halfway across the bay, got into a huge storm. And you don't want to get seasick before your potential in-laws. I mean, man, how humiliating. But I think my father-in-law, Lane, saw that I was sick and he just said, here's what you need, and handed me a cold beer. And things seemed to work out fine. My public career began in 1994 when I was city council mayor of Richmond, and we were doing a tremendous amount of work on water quality issues affecting the Bay watershed. As Hillary and others know, Richmond has a combined sewer overflow system that puts too much pollutants into the third largest source in the Chesapeake Bay, the James River. So we worked a lot on Chesapeake Bay issues from the standpoint of local politics, local water quality. Then as a lieutenant governor and governor, I kind of broadened my aperture and began to work with Mayor Frame and legislators in this area on Chesapeake Bay cleanliness issues. And I will say this, I had 2 Republican houses my first 2 years and 1 each my second 2 years. And the only 2 issues that were purely nonpartisan when I was governor, Chesapeake Bay and veterans issues. And we were able to do a lot, just as most governors end up deciding, even if it may not have been what they wanted to do when they went into office. They end up deciding to do things about the Chesapeake Bay. Of course, Governor Northam was a Chesapeake Bay born and bred and wanted to do so much, but we were able to do a lot during my time as governor to invest in clean up sewage treatment plants and reduce ag runoff, and that was so powerful. And I continue to work on Chesapeake Bay issues in the Senate with my Maryland colleagues, my Pennsylvania colleagues, with Bobby Scott, with Mark Warner, and others. But I will say my favorite Chesapeake Bay experience was this. So now, this is not a shill where I'm trying to sell it that was published in April 9th. No, we're in a library. Check it out. We even have some here. I embraced a nature journey when I hit 60 and celebrated 25 years of elected office. And my nature journey was, I want to create the epic Virginia quest. What will that be? As soon as I asked myself that question, the answer jumped into my brain. I will hike the whole Appalachian Trail from the Virginia portion, from Hartford Strait to Tennessee. I will bicycle the entire Virginia portion of the Skyline Drive and Blue Ridge Parkway from Front Royal to the North Carolina border. And then I'll canoe the whole James River. From Iron Gate, Virginia, the Allegheny Mountains, where the Jackson and Cowpasture rivers combine to form the James, all the way to Fort Monroe in Chesapeake Bay. I started in May of 2019 on this Virginia Nature Triathlon, and it took me 30 months, 76 days over the course of 30 months during weekends and recess weeks to do this journey and learn about Virginia, and learn about myself, learn about our history, learn about our people. But of the 3 parts of the journey, the one that was truly the most magnificent was the canoeing portion on the James and into the Chesapeake Bay. The others were great too, but in some ways, the 100 miles between Richmond and Fort Monroe, because I hadn't canoed it before, because why would you? There are barges out there. Why would you? But canoeing that, wind, wave, tide, sturgeon, restoration, tribes along the shores that I helped get recognized who were sharing with me their own histories was true and natural. I finished up on a very blustery day. It was a small craft morning, and I was definitely in a small craft as I canoed the last 12 miles from the James River Bridge in Newport News through the Monitor Merrimack tunnel cut and took the north turn and went all the way to Fort Monroe and beached there in a small craft morning with aircraft carriers and subs very visible near my very small boat. But truly an amazing experience. And so I am now a saltwater kid. I'm no longer the Kansas freshwater kid. I'm a saltwater kid now. And the journeys continue. I was just saying to Hillary that in about a month I'm going to do a bucket list trip that I've never done in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is Canoe Drag and Run. A pristine body of water in the Middle Peninsula that runs into the Rappahannock. I guess it probably runs into the Piankatank. About 37 miles long. I helped preserve it with the Nature Conservancy when I was governor, but I've never put my boat in it. And I'm going to do it with a friend in about a month. So I'm very connected. The topic tonight is climate change, keeping our community safe and prosperous. And battling climate change globally, or in our country, or right here in Hampton Roads, especially right here in Hampton Roads, it is about environmental stewardship, clearly. And we want to have a preserved environment, not only for ourselves, but I came to realize during my nature journey that Virginians all have this special place. Might be a sunset, might be a mountain, might be a beach, might be a river, might be a state park, might be a trail, might be a swamp, a special place, and we want that place to be available to our kids and grandkids so they can see it and experience it and enjoy it and take refuge in it just as we have. And so what we do to battle climate change is about environmental stewardship, but the topic is actually not so much about environmental stewardship, it's about keeping our community safe and prosperous. Doing the right thing by climate change is about safety. It's about the safety of public health. Clean air, clean water's impact on public health is so remarkable. But it's also about safety in the other sense of national security. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I'm the chairman of the Sea Power. Well, I used to be the chairman. I'm the ranking member now. I should add my comments. I'm the lead Democrat on the Sea Power Subcommittee in Armed Services. And climate change is driving all kinds of conflicts all over this globe. Conflicts that then push migration patterns that are incredibly destabilizing. If you look at the cause for instability around the world, so many of our most grim, unstable situations have an environmental or climate change connection. And it's also about prosperity. Some will put the environment at odds with prosperity. Is it trying to protect the environment as an economic loser? I don't have to make that case to anybody in the room. You live at Hampton Roads for a reason. The bay, the quality of life, the industries of tourism or maritime industries depend upon cleanliness of the Chesapeake Bay, depend upon strategies to deal with sea level rise, and it's integrally connected to economic success. We've seen that in my hometown of Richmond. I mean, Richmond was 240,000 people in 1970. And by the time I got on the Richmond City Council, we were 191,000 people. We lost 20% of our population. We're now back, by the next census, I think we'll be back to 240. We'll be back to where we were. And one of the main reasons was that we used the Clean Water Act to clean up the James River, and we turned it from a sewer into like everybody's front porch. Environmental regulations may not be perfect, but if you do them, you will find that they won't detract from your prosperity, they will augment and accelerate your prosperity. So if that is the case, that battling climate change is about environmental stewardship, but also about prosperity and also about safety, what should you do? I've got 5 to-dos and 2 not-to-dos. So the first thing we need to do, and when I say we, I mean state, local, Fed, I mean the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and the Elizabeth River Project. I mean individuals taking actions, whether it's the rain garden at their school or solar panels on their rooftop. There's things that we all need to do. The first thing we need to do is invest in water cleanliness. You know, if we invest in water cleanliness, and that means certainly strategies to reduce agricultural runoff and point source pollution, sewage treatment upgrades, or non-point source pollution, stormwater runoff. If we do those things, we will improve the public health, improve the quality of the bay and all of our resources. We improve water quality when we invest in oyster restoration. I mean, that's one of the genius strategies of the Elizabeth River Project, and the CBF has focused on that so much as well. Oysters are the greatest cleaners of water that God ever invented. And they do such a good job, and when we have conditions where they can thrive, then water gets cleaner. So that's the first strategy that we need to embrace, one that isn't so controversial. Second, we have to invest in resilience. I wish the resilience investments weren't needed. I wish we could say we're going to solve climate and sort of turn it around, but we've set a set of gears in motion that are not going to be reversed. We can slow down a pace, and maybe over the course of a long period of time we can reverse them, but we're not able to do that now, and so what we need to do is invest in resilience. I'm very happy that I worked together with Senator Warner and Congressman Scott to help Norfolk, through the Corps of Engineers, get a $399 million grant for the Norfolk Coastal Storm Risk Management Plan. And it's going to cost multiples of that, but that's a good start on resilience investments in Norfolk. And Norfolk was first out of the gate of the communities in the region. We've also gotten planning funding for Virginia Beach, but Norfolk was first out of the gate with the plan, so now we're moving forward on those investments. We need to invest in resilience in that strategy too. Strategy 3 is the one that gets controversial, at least in the place where we work, Congress, and that's transform to a low and no carbon energy economy. Not immediately, not overnight. You don't throw an emergency brake on the energy economy. It's a matter of shaping and directing, but we have to do this. We have to do this. In this community, second most vulnerable to sea level rise on the East Coast, only second to New Orleans. Just being on the receiving end of sea level rise and griping about our victimhood about it, that's not enough. That's not who Virginians are. That's not what we should do. We have to embrace strategies to transform to low and no carbon, and then be the innovators and leaders that others want to learn from. And the good news is we are doing that in a pretty remarkable way. With Congressman Scott and Mayor Alexander, we visited today the Virginia offshore wind investments that are being made right here in Norfolk, by a number of companies who are going to make this community the center of offshore wind manufacturing in the United States. You're aware of the offshore wind farm that's being built off the coast of Virginia Beach, wind built. It will be the largest offshore wind farm in the United States. And one of the largest in the world. When I said you're going to be the largest in the United States, some of the planners said it was the largest in the world until somebody took two and said they were the same thing, and that was bigger. So they're already, they've got this pride about being the largest in the world. But what a great name for Hampton Roads, the 757, and Virginia to say, yeah, we've got some challenges with sea level rise, but we're taking matters into our own hands, and we are going to be the most innovative, forward-leaning center of offshore wind in this country, and one of the most innovative in the world. And it's not just offshore wind. Here's one that surprised me a little bit. There was an announcement 2 weeks back that Virginia is now 8th in the nation in the amount of solar energy deployed. Among all 50 states, we're number 8. As recently as 2016, Virginia was 39th in the nation. So in less than 10 years, we've climbed from 39 to 8, and we've got we're still climbing the charts. You know, if you remember the old record charts, the ones with the arrow, we're climbing fast, and we are climbing fast. And Governor, you had a huge amount to do with that. We needed to change the way we looked at energy regulation and prioritize efficiency and prioritize low carbon energy. And you and the legislators did that in a way that is causing us to really race ahead of other states. So That's the third thing we have to do. Now that's the controversial one, and it shouldn't be controversial, but we have many in our body who want to raise, in my view, sort of specious objections to low and no carbon energy, especially wind and solar. But we got to push forward because we are not just doing the right thing for this community, we are setting an innovation standard for the world. Fourth thing that we need to do is something that you guys do real well: have all stakeholders at the table. Bobby and I had a session probably nearly 10 years ago now, where we had a session over at Old Dominion University on what we do about sea level rise in Hampton Roads. So, we thought we might get 150 people there, but we had around 500 people. We had a fantastic, energized group, and it was state government, local government, planning districts, NPO, federal agencies. It was the defense sector and the civilian sector. It was the nonprofits, and it was interested individuals. And I will say this, you should not take for granted that having all stakeholders at the table is an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And in many communities in Virginia, maybe they're not dealing with sea level rise, they might be dealing with transportation planning or other climate issues like extreme weather events in Southwest Virginia. It's hard to get everybody at the table. It really is hard. And I think that you've done a good job at that here, and that's something that needs to continue. I know the CBF and the other NGOs really see the difference in communities that do that well and those that don't. And the last strategy is we've got to continue our commitment to research, because there's a lot of answers we still don't know. Y'all are blessed with great higher ed institutions, and I could, Bobby and I have fought for budgetary allocations for degree programs in Hampton and investments in our other institutions here, but the one that I do want to hold up, and I'm really excited about, is the Batten Center, the Batten School of Coastal and Marine Science at BIMS. The Virginia Institute of Marine Science in Gloucester is one of the premier marine biology centers in the United States. It's equivalent to Woods Hole, Massachusetts, or Scripps and St. Hill, but it is not known so well. It is not known so well. It's every bit in terms of how many PhDs it's produced, productivity. Every bit as important as those others, but it's not known so well. And I've been saying that President Rowe at William & Mary for many years, make VIMS known just for how great it is. What more can we do? And she called me about a year ago and said, I got something for you. And let me know that the Batten family had decided to make this lead $100 million gift to really take VIMS into this stratosphere with a particular focus. The civilian sector, it was the nonprofits, and it was interested individuals. And I will say this, you should not take for granted that having all stakeholders at the table is an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And in many communities in Virginia, maybe they're not dealing with sea level rise, they might be dealing with transportation planning or other climate issues like extreme weather events in Southwest Virginia. It's hard to get everybody at the table. It really is hard. And I think that you've done a good job at that here, and that's something that needs to continue. I know the CBF and the other NGOs really see the difference in communities that do that well and those that don't. And the last strategy is we've got to continue our commitment to research, because there's a lot of answers we still don't know. Y'all are blessed with great higher ed institutions, and I could, Bobby and I have fought for budgetary allocations for degree programs in Hampton and investments in our other institutions here, but the one that I do want to hold up, and I'm really excited about, is the Batten Center, the Batten School of Coastal and Marine Science at BIMS. The Virginia Institute of Marine Science in Gloucester is one of the premier marine biology centers in the United States. It's equivalent to Woods Hole, Massachusetts, or Scripps and St. Hill, but it is not known so well. It is not known so well. It's every bit in terms of how many PhDs it's produced, productivity. Every bit as important as those others, but it's not known so well. And I've been saying that President Rowe at William & Mary for many years, make VIMS known just for how great it is. What more can we do? And she called me about a year ago and said, I got something for you. And let me know that the Batten family had decided to make this lead $100 million gift to really take VIMS into this stratosphere with a particular focus. Woods Hole and Scripps are about deep water marine biology. VIMS is about coastal and estuarine marine biology, where the vast majority of the world's populations live on coasts. And so VIMS is going to be a tremendous asset. And we need this, and we need our other research institutions, because we don't know yet what the best resilience investments are. The plan that we're implementing in Norfolk, I think, was a really good plan. If we weren't implementing it and we came back 10 years from now and decided we wanted to do something in Norfolk, we might do something different. We're learning as we're going. The strategies we had to save Tangier Island have changed over time. And we need the research institutions to give us their best science, so that when we make the resilience investments, we try to decide what we do to advance innovation in low and no carbon, we can get there. So those are my 5 to do, and now I got 2 now. Indiscriminate budget cuts and firings. A very bad idea. Right? I mean, there are times when you have to make cuts. I was governor from 2006 to 2010. There was a recession. I think I'm still the only governor that left office with a lower budget than when I started, which is why no one has ever suggested I run for governor. There was a lot of budget cutting and grimness, but you don't do it indiscriminately. You carefully weigh priorities, and you weigh the performance and what programs really put a lot of bang for the buck, and what isn't, what can you let go, and somebody else will pick it up. But indiscriminate, we're just going to fire X% of people. We're going to fire everybody who's a probationary employee because they can't find out. Probationary employees at the federal level are not, they haven't done something bad. They're new hires, which means they're young people or career switchers, and the career switchers are veterans, for God's sake. 30% of the federal workforce is veteran. When you just decide to indiscriminately fire people, you are punishing veterans more than anybody else. And when you go after probationers in particular, you are really, really going after veterans. When you get your first job where you become a supervisor, you've been a line employee for a long time, and now you've done really great, and you're a supervisor, you're a probationary employee because you were given a promotion. And these folks are getting laid off. And similarly with the budget cuts, and I know this is what Hillary and CDF are really focused on right now, is what about if there's an effort to slash the EPA? Well, that's where the Chesapeake Bay program is. That's where many of the things that I talked about that we should do at the federal level, those should-dos are usually within Interior, EPA, or some of the other related agencies. And so I get it. If the answer is, to deal with the deficit or other realities, we got to time to develop and make some cuts. Let's make them in strategic ways. Let's hold up the Chesapeake Bay program against other programs, and let folks make their case about which are valuable and which are more valuable. And if you have to make cuts that way, you may not like making them, but you're going to do them in a way that's much more likely to value the priorities of today and tomorrow that are important than what's going on now. And then the second thing that we got to really avoid, and then I'll conclude, is sort of a reflexive attack on clean energy, which is going on right now. The president on day one of his administration did a lot of things on day one, but one was declared a national energy emergency. Now, national energy emergency. The United States is producing more natural gas right now than we ever have in our history. The United States is producing more oil now than we ever have in our history. The United States is deploying more renewable energy now than we ever have in our history. And the real measure that I think says we're not in an emergency is we have the greatest energy surplus ever in the history of the United States. Surplus meaning the excess of what we produce to what we consume. We have a significant surplus of production over what we consume. And we have been able to use that surplus in some pretty powerful ways. For example, exporting LNG to nations so they can wean themselves off of reliance on Russia or Iran or Venezuela. Helping allies wean themselves off reliance on petro-dictators, that's a good thing. We are not in an emergency. But the president declared the emergency in order to do the next thing, which was to say energy production should get a bypass around the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the National Environmental Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act, and other important environmental protections. But guess what? Not all energy gets the bypass. If you're wind and solar, you don't get the bypass. It's oil, gas, coal that get the bypass. Now, I think, as I think about things that matter to our president, not relying on others and producing our own is something that really matters to him. And I agree with that. Let's not rely on others. Let's produce our own. And when we have technologies like wind and solar where we can produce our own, and it's cleaner, and the prices are coming down, and you can put them online and have them connected to the grid much faster than others, we should do it. So those would be my two thou shalt nots. Let's not do indiscriminate cuts to programs and indiscriminate firings, and let's not have a hostility to these low and no carbon energy sources where we are now innovating in ways that the rest of the world is trying to learn from us. I am an optimist about us figuring this out, even in a challenging political environment. In fact, Mark Warner, my friend of 45 years in the Senate, says I'm too optimistic about everything. And every time he says that, I say, well then, you're too pessimistic about everything. So Virginia senators are right at the national average. Just put us in and shake us up and divide by two. We're right at the national average. But I am an optimistic person. I'm telling you what, I'm optimistic we're going to solve these climate issues, issues around sea level rise, issues around American innovation and clean energy space, and I am for two reasons. One, Virginians really love nature. I mean, that was the overwhelming lesson that I learned in 30 months and 76 days in writing this book. Nobody knew when I was going to show up. I was showing up unshaven and smelling bad, with raggedy hiking clothes, with a bucket hat on, stepping out my canoe. A lot of people didn't recognize me. Most didn't recognize me. They were Democrats, they were Republicans, they didn't care all about politics. But we were talking about how much we loved the trail that we were on, or the sunset we were seeing, or all these places along the way. Virginians care so passionately about being good stewards of what has been granted to us. On day 74, day 76 was the day that I came ashore in the small craft morning at Fort Monroe. But day 74, I was canoeing solo. I usually had somebody in the boat with me. This was the day I was canoeing solo by Jamestown Island. And I went by the island, and a lot of people were looking at me like, who's that joker out there by himself in a canoe with the Scotland ferry, going back and forth across the river. But if you ever have a chance to do it, you should, because you go by the developed part of the island, and as you're going downstream, about 2/3 of the island is completely undeveloped. There's a beautiful sand beach as you go down river left. And I pulled over, and I pulled my canoe up, and maybe had a sandwich for lunch, and I was sitting on a piece of driftwood, and I was looking across the river, thinking about the 74 days of the journey. And I realized this is, John Smith probably saw this. Pocahontas probably saw it. There's very little you can see there on the other side of the river, on the Isle of Wight side. There's just not that much. And it looked like it probably looked 400 years ago. And I just thought, in that day, I knew I was getting near the end of the journey. All these people that I'd met along the way were so different than me in so many ways, and yet they were the same as me, in that they were passionate about the beauty of Virginia and the desire to save it. And that's part of it. There's the optimism kind of thing that does. It's just, we're such ingenious when we have a challenge. We're such ingenious people. Americans are. And I don't know if we have a monopoly on that. If I was in Ireland, I would say about the Irish, I'm sure that I would. But we are really ingenious people at solving problems. And every problem, on days when I feel pessimistic, I realize every problem has an answer. Now, I don't have the answers, but there is an answer. And somebody has the answer. And so the only issue is, am I going to keep my ears open enough to listen for the answers when they arrive? Because sometimes the answers, even complex technical challenges, come from very unlikely places. Here's a March Madness story about an answer coming from an unlikely place. My son Matt was in middle school back when the March Madness had 64 teams. This was before the playing games. And he was in a math class that had super smart math brainiacs and then some kids who weren't that good at math. And the teacher said, it's March Madness. There's 64 teams. How many games are played in the tournament? My son is a math wizard. Okay, 32 in the first round, 16 in the second round. Some kid who is the worst math student in the class yells out, 63 games. And everybody turns around and looks at this kid. The teacher goes, 63, that's the right answer. How did you know? How did you figure that out so fast? 64 teams, single elimination. 63 teams have to lose. 63 games. There are many ways to solve problems, and there's answers to every problem, and the answers are out there. And our job is to keep our ears open enough, do the right things, stakeholder engagement, invest in research, clean water, invest in low and no carbon energy, invest in zoos, do the right things, don't do the wrong things, keep our ears open for the answers that are there, and we will get to where we need to be. Thank you so very much.